Hey, what's going on, guys? How are you doing today? Hope you are enjoying the start to your Friday. If you are watching this on the day I record it, I kind of had a slight delay in today's episode, had to take care of some personal business, a lot of calls and talking to customer service reps. So yeah, everybody knows how annoying that is. So I'm coming fresh off of that. So I've already kind of loosened the jaws a little bit as far as talking. So as you can tell, I'm already ready to get into this episode. And yeah, welcome to my latest preview episode. Thank you to those that have already watched all the teams previews I've already done. And we're just going to keep that ball rolling today with the Carolina Panthers. If this is your first preview video you're watching, a quick rundown, you're going to get a preview from the offensive side, a defensive side, and my overall feelings at the end of the video. I'm also going to give it a fantasy football perspective as far as like any players I want to draft, any players I want to avoid. And then a little thing to note, guys, if you do see anything as far as projected starters, that is pulled from the Prospect Encyclopedia. That is a project I am part of since the inaugural edition last year. And if you see any like starters or any notable backups with a star next to their name, that means they made the top 22 list in the Prospect Encyclopedia. What that means is all 32 teams in that book, they have a top 22 player list, and in order to make that list, you have to be from the last 3 draft classes. You have to have less than 12 career regular season starts. There's some other qualifiers, but I don't want to give it everything away from the book. I want you to go purchase it and read all of our writers' great work in there. And so basically, if you see a star next to their name, that means they have a scouting report on that player before this upcoming season and what we expect out of them. But I'm gonna go ahead and get into this episode. Let's talk about the Panthers. Matt Rule is entering his second year as a head coach in Carolina. He was one of the guys I was very high on as far as being a head coach candidate last year. I'm a big believer that he's going to be able to turn things around in Carolina, and he's going to be able to develop a winning culture for the Panthers. Last year, he got off to a really strong start. I mean, even though I was a big believer, I didn't expect them to come out swinging like that early. They were winning games, and then everything kind of got stale towards the end of the year. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey being out of the lineup does not help you whatsoever. And they kind of stumbled, but I think they went on a losing streak, if I remember right, and it just kind of fell flat on their face to end the season. So they moved on from Teddy Bridgewater. They brought in Sam Darnold. I don't know if that's a winning move, but I'll talk about that here in a moment. But obviously, they are looking for more out of their quarterback position because they technically gave Teddy that 2-year deal. They released they traded him to Denver. They wanted to move on from him, and now they got Sam Darnold. But as far as Matt Rule, I think he's going to be able to continue to rebuild this Carolina team into a winning team, but I'm just not sure. We'll have to go into this. As of right now, I'm not sure that's going to happen quite this year. This might be another up and down, middle of the pack type of year for Carolina. But regardless, I still think Matt Rule is one heck of a coach. And by the time we get to year 3 underneath him, I definitely expect them to put together a winning season. Now let's go ahead and get into this. One thing I do before I get into the offensive preview is I do want to look over the remaining cap space, and as far as notable players entering a contract year, they have some room to work with prior to the season if they wanted to do some moves. They actually have the 3rd most remaining cap space, $23.9 million. That's per over the cap as of last night before this recording. Of course, that is always subject to change. And then their notable players entering a contract year, they got a number of starters that are due. So they're either going to let these guys move on and they'll have to replace them in the offseason. But Dante Jackson, it does sound like that's a guy they're ready to move on from. He's hit and miss. When he's on, he's on. He can create a lot of turnovers, get his hands on balls. But they just drafted J.C. Horn in the 1st round. So I don't see a contract extension for coming in for Dante. Maybe if he performs out of his mind this year, they maybe franchise tag him and maybe try to work out something in the offseason. But I don't see that coming before the season. Robbie Anderson's a guy I don't expect a contract extension for. I mean, he's been good. He was good in his first year in Carolina. It's the wide receiver position. It's basically going to become the running back position at some point in the future. Matt Paradis is an older, aging veteran lineman. I don't expect that to happen before the season. And then John Miller, Justin Burris, and Ian Thomas are guys I don't expect to get contract extensions. So I don't really see any of them getting an extension. So maybe they go out there and try to acquire any remaining veterans on the free agent market that could help their roster this year, or maybe they look into pursuing some trades as well. Don't expect it to be like a guy for like Xavier Howard, but maybe they do go get a guy like Chandler Jones. I mean, I like Etor Gross Matos, and they do got Hassan Reddick, depending on how they line him up this year. But that would be kind of cool to see Chandler Jones and Brian Burns coming off that edge together, and they would have one heck of a rotation as well. That's just me spitballing right there. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get into this. We're gonna get into the offensive preview. Now, the projected starters, again, from the Prospect Encyclopedia, this is from Zach Garton. So this is going to be his first team that I am talking about. You can follow him at all22_addict on Twitter. He's a really great guy. I got a chance to work with him in my last year with Blitz. He did a lot of good stuff for us. He's got a really good presence on Twitter. He does a really good job as far as breaking down the film and everything. And the kid's got a bright future in football, regardless of what he's going to do. I know he's been doing some coaching stuff, and I think he's coaching high school football right now. He's trying to get into, but the guy's got a future in football. He knows what he's talking about. So please go give Zach a follow. We're going to start with the quarterback position, Sam Darnold. I'm telling you right now, I don't believe in it. I was not a big believer in Sam Darnold. I believe he was my QB4 in his class. I always had concerns with his turnovers, and that didn't stop at the NFL level. He continued to turn over the ball. If you look at his stats from the last 3 years since he's been in the league, he has been highly unproductive, highly inefficient, turning over the ball. He's basically in the negative on every stat that you would want out of a quarterback, yards per game, all that type of stuff. Now, obviously, you can point to, hey, Cody, he was playing for the Jets. Hey, Cody, they didn't build around him. Hey, Cody, he had to work with Adam Gase. I totally get that, and I do hope that, I do hope he can turn things around in Carolina. I really do. I don't wish ill upon any NFL player that they can't work it out. I'm not in the NFL. You guys made it to the NFL, so you have more talent than I could ever dream of. So I probably shouldn't be talking bad about you. But for Sam Darnold, he's just a guy I never saw it. I never saw it with. I think he can be a good backup at this point of his career. But who knows? I could be totally wrong. He's got the arm talent. He just has to be better with his decision making, and just gotta. I don't know. He just seems like he's a spaz sometimes when he's in the pocket. He just has to have that. I want to see him have better control over his situation when he's in there. But yeah, this is a total prove it year for Sam Darnold. If he does not work out this year, I would not be surprised if Carolina is once again in the quarterback market in the next offseason. And their backups, if he goes down, I mean, PJ Walker's a fun guy to watch, and he'll probably be their backup. I don't think Will Greer's going to push for that position. And then in terms of fantasy, no, don't draft Sam Darnold. Don't waste a pick on him. He's a guy where, yeah, he for sure has weapons. He could dump it off to Christian McCaffrey and the wide receivers I'm going to talk about. And he can put up yards and points, but let's see that happen first. He's a guy you don't have to waste a pick on, but I would at least pay it, because he is technically a former first-round pick, right? So if it is going to work out, pay attention to what's going on in Carolina in that first 2 to 3 weeks. If Sam's lighting up the world, maybe he's also a fantasy relevant quarterback. But other than that, I am not trying to waste my time on that situation. Now, moving to a guy I am totally comfortable drafting with the number 1 pick if I end up with that in my number 1 drafts. This is RB1 to me. He's the best running back in the league, and that's Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, people might be a little down on him just because it seems like, last year, even though he was his first time in his career, he was banged up. I think some people might have forgotten how really good this dude has been in the last 3 years. Let's take a look at these stats that I collected over the summer. Again, I like to collect stats from the last 3 years I like to do a 3-year sample size to see who's been the most productive players in the last 3 years. Now, keep in mind, CMC was hurt last year. If you look at Pro Football Reference, it says he missed 6 starts. So I think he was out 6 games, but I think there's even the 10 games he started in. I think there's maybe a game or two where he played. He got hurt at the beginning and missed some time, but he still is up here in the stats. So taking a look at that, here's 2 really good ones. Since 2018, He's one of 5 players with a season of 1,700 plus scrimmage yards and 15 touchdowns. Since 2018, he's one of 9 running backs that have averaged 50 plus rushing yards and 25 plus receiving yards per game. So he brings in a high floor every week, and then he has the capability of absolutely blowing up and winning you a week at any given time, any given Sunday. Now look at these stats since 2018. I'm just going to kind of run down here. He has the most fantasy points per game at 27. He has the most receiving yards among running backs since 2018, 2021. Most receiving yards per game at 57.7. He has the second most receiving touchdowns among running backs at 11. The second most receptions among running backs at 240. Third most scrimmage yards at 4,731 yards. And then here's a good one. He's tied for the 5th most total touchdowns between running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. He's got tied for the 5th at 38. 6th most rushing yards per attempt at 4.8. 7th most rushing yards per game at 77.4. Tied for the 7th most rushing touchdowns at 27, and 10th most rushing yards since 2018, 2,710. So he's a dual threat quarterback. He is also the first, I should remember this, he's also the first running back ever, I think, to have the 1,000 season when he got that 17 plus scrimmage yards and the 15 plus touchdown year, which was in 2019. So I don't expect that to change. He'll get all the snaps because the running backs behind him, they're more a change of pace type of players. And then on top of that, not only they're change of pace type of players. Sorry, guys. Man, my nose was really clogged there. So I do apologize you had to hear that. But yeah, so I think he's going to be able to bounce back this year. And not only he's going to be able to bounce back, coming back healthy, he's going to dominate the touches, so there's no reason why he shouldn't be the first running back off the board this year. Now moving on to their wide receivers, DJ Moore, stud, absolutely love him. If there is a guy that I would pick out of this wide receiver room, it would be DJ Moore. DJ Moore can take the ball out of the backfield. He could be manufactured touches. He's an up-and-coming wide receiver, and I think he's going to see the most amount of targets in this wide receiver group. To me, DJ Moore's in that wide receiver 2 to 3 range. He can be a wide receiver 2 for you. And I mean, if he can just get consistent quarterback play, I think he could work his way up to being a wide receiver 1. But until I see that proven on the field, I think he's best served as a wide receiver 3, maybe a 2 on your roster. But he's a guy I would be totally comfortable drafting because he's been the most productive wide receiver in Carolina since he's joined the team. They still have Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson, of course, most people know at this point of fantasy football, he's more of that boom or bust guy. He could be a field stretcher. He could take the top off the defense. Now, there is one thing to note that him and Sam Darnold did play with each other. I believe it was Sam's rookie year, and they were able to put up some numbers together and flash some ability to put up some points. So there is maybe some chemistry there, and maybe that does continue here in Carolina. So that is something to watch. Robbie Anderson, to me, he's a guy that, I want to draft on my bench. And then if there's a bye week, if an injury happens, I have him, I can slide in. And then if all of a sudden him and Sam are showing that chemistry and they're producing week in and week out, and then all of a sudden you got a guy that can be like a wide receiver 3, maybe even a wide receiver 2 on your roster. But I really like the duo combination of DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. Now, Terrace Marshall Jr., he's going to be probably working out of their slot. He's a guy that's actually knows Joe Brady. Joe Brady was his offensive coordinator at LSU, so he knows the offensive scheme. He's a really good route runner. As far as fantasy, though, I don't think he's worth drafting. I think it's just DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. If Terrace Marshall emerges at some point in the beginning of the year, maybe you can go pick him off the waivers. But I do think his skill set complements Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. I really like this trio of wide receivers because you got DJ Moore, who's kind of like I don't want to say gadget player, but a kind of do-it-all jack of all trades type of guy for them. They're going to be able to manipulate him all over the lineup within the offensive scheme. And then Robbie Anderson, he's got his role, right? He's going to be the field stretcher. He can run all the routes, but he's more going to take the ball down, 10 to 15 yards, probably his yards per target, I'd imagine. And then Terrace Marshall, he's just going to work the middle of the field with his route running ability and find holes in the defense to get open. So I really like what those three can do and what they can do off of each other. So I'm pretty excited to see if that can work, and if Sam Darnold can take advantage of that. They did sign David Moore from the Seahawks. He's a wide receiver. He's just a solid backup wide receiver. And if anybody goes down, he will go in and get the job done. So he will definitely get some snaps within the rotation and definitely work on the boundary for them. Shi Smith is another guy to watch to work out of slot, the rookie guy out of I believe South Carolina. But yeah, it's overall a pretty good group of wide receivers. But again, I just have my questions if it's going to work out with Sam Darnold throwing them the ball. And then as far as their tight end group, they did sign Dan Arnold from the New Orleans Saints. He's been a sneakily slightly productive tight end in this league. He was with Arizona. He was with the Saints. No, he was with the Saints. He went to Arizona. I'm sorry. And then now he's with Carolina. Pretty cool story for those that actually know me, for those that actually graduated from either Lancaster or Platteville, Wisconsin. They'll know this school. He actually played at University of Wisconsin Platteville, which is a town that I grew up next to. I ended up graduating high school in. That's a long story I won't get into. But yeah, he's actually from the area I basically grew up in. And he played football there. So every time he's on the field, I'm like, wow, a D3 kid from a small town in Wisconsin made it to the NFL. So it's definitely a pretty cool story. But they also have Ian Thomas, who just hasn't worked out. He was supposed to be Greg Olson's replacement, but he just really has lacked consistency. And they also drafted Tommy Tremble, who did put up a lot of production in college, but he's got an athletic profile. So we'll have to see how these tight ends merge. Dan Arnold probably will eventually be the starter. He's just the guy to watch. I don't know if I'm going to actively draft Dan Arnold, but I would not be surprised if he becomes like a solid fantasy tight end where, he's not going to get you a lot of points, but, with tight ends, sometimes you're like, dude, just give me at least 5 or 6 points. That might be Dan Arnold this year, so just watch him in his first week of the year. Now, outside of I'm sorry, Sam Darnold, I don't mean to trash you, but it's like I really like your running back. I really like your wide receivers. Okay, tight end group. But if there is another thing that I am somewhat concerned about in this Carolina offense is their offensive line. Cameron Irving, he's an all right left tackle for now. But obviously they're hoping either one of the guys they have invested draft capital, either Greg Little or Brady Christensen, can step up and eventually be the left tackle of their future. John Miller is a decent guard. Matt Paradis, he's a really good veteran center, but eventually, he's getting up there in the age. Pat Elflein, he had a terrible experience, terrible showing up in Minnesota. He bounced back his career in New York, but now he's in a new spot in Carolina. So what are we going to get? Are we going to see what we saw at the Jets, which performed all right? Or are we going to see a really bad Pat Elflein, which we saw in Minnesota? So that's kind of got me worried about that side of the line. And Taylor Moton's a pretty good right tackle. He just signed a contract extension earlier this month. And then they do got some youth behind those guys. So obviously, like I mentioned, I believe John Miller and Matt Paradis are set to be free agents after this year. So it does seem like they have the future in mind with some of their backup guys that they drafted, with Deontay Brown, David Moore, Sam Tecklenburg. Those type of guys are in the prospect encyclopedia. So at least they have the future in their mind. As a whole, I don't know what we're going to get out of this offense. Like, if Sam Darnold's going to perform like a first-round quarterback, like, boom, oh my gosh, like this offense could be very exciting. Or if it's the Sam Darnold we've seen the last 3 years, I don't even want to watch it. It's going to be bad. He's going to be turning over the ball. And if you're a fantasy owner of DJ Moore or Robbie Anderson, you're going to be frustrated the whole time. I'm not worried about Christian McCaffrey. He can produce regardless of who is at quarterback. We've seen that in the past. So, but if you're a wide receiver owner, that's going to be something that frustrates you. Basically, I think they have enough on the offensive line. They got decent tight end group. I think they got a solid wide receiver group, and they got one of the best. They have, in my opinion, the best running back in the league. So there's no reason why this offense should not be successful. It's all going to come down to Sam Darnold. I'm gonna go ahead though and keep it moving. Try to take a break from the trash and Sam Darnold train. We are going to take a look at their defense, and as far as their defense, I'll take a look at their defensive front. And their defensive front, it has some potential. Let me just say that, because they got some really great guys that I like in week one. I'm sorry, not week one. I was looking at something on my screen. In their defensive front. Let me just start all over. Their defensive front contains Brian Burns, which I think this guy, most people know him if you're a draft fan, but he might be a quiet name among household people. But that guy is about to become a star, and I think he can put together a all-pro season in year 3. We'll have to see how Bravion Roy comes along this year. Derek Brown was my DT1 in his class, and he just takes up space and has so much strength. So I like the combination of Derek Brown and Brian Burns. And then Yetur Gross-Matos is a guy that I like coming off the edge. And if he can continue his development, I really like the bookend capability. Pass rushers between Brian Burns and Yetur Gross-Matos. So it's a pretty solid defensive front, but you're also betting on Bravion Roy and Gross-Matos taking that next step in their career. And then my biggest concern, though, with this, not only with the defensive front, I'll just go ahead and say this, with this whole defense, they really lack experienced backups. They really lack talented backups. So if the top of this defense starts to get hit with the injury bug, this defense is going to go south very quick. There's no doubt about that. Now, their linebacker group, man, it's definitely an above average linebacker group. I would say it's one of the better linebacker groups I have came across since I've started the preview series. But it's going to be dependent on how they utilize these guys and how if they can stay healthy. Shaq Thompson, he's basically been a staple of this Panthers defense since he's joined, especially whenever Luke Kuechly retired. Was that last year or the year before? He retired, I think, last year, right? Yeah. So Luke, he's been the staple of the middle of the defense. He's a good player. Denzel Perryman's a guy I've always liked. He anytime he's on the field, he's a productive linebacker. But that's the thing. He's kind of been dealing with injuries for the last couple of years, and now he comes over from the Chargers. As a fan of his game, I hope he does stay on the field. And then Hassan Reddick is coming off his best season as a pro, which he's a guy I'm kind of curious to watch and see how they deploy, because Zach has him listed as an outside linebacker in their 4-3 scheme right now, but he just came off his best year being more of a primary pass rusher. So I think they're going to kind of use him as a linebacker, line him up in pass rushing situations. And he kind of be used all over. So I'm kind of curious how he will be used, but I am not going to lie. I do like the idea of when you're sitting there on 3rd and long situations of Brian Burns, Yetur Gross-Matos, and Hassan Reddick somewhere lined up in that defensive front and attacking the quarterback. So I definitely like the thought of that. So I like the potential of what they offer in their defensive front, but we have to see how exactly they line it up and what type of packages they put together. Now, their secondary, it's all right. I'll say that. I really like I think that's what I think I'm getting at. The potential of their defense. I like the potential of their secondary. J.C. Horn's a really good cornerback coming in as a rookie. A.J. Bouye, he's a cornerback I've always liked. He's always best served as a cornerback 2 on a roster. The Denver experience didn't go as well. He's looking to bounce back his career. I think he's in a prove-it year for himself and for other NFL teams if he has what it takes to continue as a starting cornerback in this league. But if he can get back to the player that we were seeing in Jacksonville, him and J.C. Horn can make one heck of a cornerback tandem. And then Dante Jackson working as a nickel corner. I mean, that kid can take the ball, take an interception to the house at any given moment. I like his electric playmaking ability from the cornerback position, but the thing is, the kid is he just has to develop consistency because like one moment he's like making all these plays and the next moment he's getting beat. So you just want to see some consistency out of him. But if JC Horn can deliver as a rookie, if Dante Jackson can be consistent, and if AJ Bouye can be somewhat of the player we were seeing in Jacksonville before his little drop off and play in Denver, I mean, you got a decent group there. And then if you look at their safeties are where, I mean, Justin Burris, he's an all right guy. They do need to figure out their free safety position of the future. But Jeremy Chin's a guy that really came on strong as a rookie, and he's a guy I really like. I wish I should have been higher on him in that draft class. I think I had him as my ranked 6th safety. I mean, I was high on him. Six is a high number in a draft class, but I think I maybe should even had him a little bit higher on that list. So Jeremy Chin's a guy I really like in this defense. Overall, the defense I think it has what it takes to be a good defense, but it's gonna come down to can all these players hit their potential, play up to their ability, and play at a consistent rate and stay on the field too. Because at the end of the day, if these guys start getting hit with the injury bug, first of all, as you can see over here in the notable backups, there's not a lot of names. You see all the stars over there. They're basically over there because they were in this prospect encyclopedia. When I was looking over their roster as a whole with the veterans, I was like, I don't see really any guys I could, really care about right now. So this is a defense that could either be good or it's going to be very bad this year because it's either going to struggle because of injuries or like the secondary is just not going to mesh well and then they're going to get picked apart through the air. But overall for this Carolina team, this is I don't know what word I'm trying to search for right now. This is I don't know, polarizing is it right? It's a bipolar team. I'll go with that. This team to me screams bipolar. I think it's a team where I think on any given week they're gonna light you up through the air. Christian McCaffrey's gonna pick you apart with his legs and with his catching ability, and they're gonna put up points. That defense is gonna get after the quarterback because of what they have in the defensive front, and then their linebacker group's gonna command the presence of the middle of the field, and their safety and their secondary is gonna do just fine because of the playmakers they have back there. But then I think the next week it's just gonna be like, oh, Sam Darnold's being Sam Darnold. He's turning over the ball. The offensive line's not playing that well. He's running for his life and getting sacked, and he's just missing his throws to the wide receivers. And then the defense is just like, they're not communicating well in the back end of the defense. Maybe a couple guys are missing because of injuries, and now they're depending on that very inexperienced group that's behind the group of starters. And they're just having a tough time stopping the ball, and they're getting ran all over and getting passed all over. I see a bipolar team happening in Carolina. It's going to be a very streaky team again for Carolina. They might start off hot like last year and fall right flat on their face. At the end of the day, though, this team comes down to Sam Darnold. If Sam Darnold plays out of his mind, I think they can compete for a wild card spot. If Sam Darnold is the Sam Darnold that we've seen for the last couple of years, I could see this team picking in the top 5. I really do. Despite the talent that they have on both sides of the ball, if Sam Darnold is not the quarterback that they want him to be, it's going to be a very long year for Carolina. So yeah, that is my preview for the Panthers today. Thank you for tuning in. Oh, really quick on the defense. They played the Jets week 1, so you got a rookie quarterback. I believe that is in Carolina. So I will say this. Carolina's defense is somebody I will consider drafting to stream week 1 against the Jets, just because I'm always willing to take a gamble against a rookie quarterback when I stream my defenses. But yeah, the next team, it will be the Denver Broncos. That I'm not sure when I will get to the Broncos video. For those that have paid attention to my end of the videos, I said this about a week ago. I have some friends coming into town today at some point, so I am trying to figure out a balance of content creation, working my real life job, or jobs. I do a bunch of work as of right now. and then obviously going to visit them. They're staying there about 30 minutes away on the beach, so I got to balance my time. I got a dog I got to take care of, so I got to figure that all out. It's very possible I might do the Broncos video tomorrow. If not, I do plan on doing the Broncos video by Monday morning. But I do want to thank you for tuning into this video. If you haven't, go watch all my other preview videos. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, tell a friend to tune in. I'll see you guys on my next video, whenever that is, when I talk about the Denver Broncos.